So a while back, there was actually a fake out where God of War had an FSR 2.0 menu item added to it, but it wasn't really FSR 2.0, and they got rid of it. But now we have the actual thing. FSR 2.0 has for real been added to God of War, and this is absolutely huge. I think AMD getting FSR 2.0 specifically into more games is going to be a huge selling point. I think this will make a huge difference in the next generation of GPUs, because to me, DLSS has been the standout feature of NVIDIA cards over their AMD counterparts. But we've only really tested out FSR 2.0 in one game, Deathloop, although it was also just launched in Farming Simulator 22. That one didn't seem that interesting to me. So we're going to dive right into God of War, and I've got some side-by-sides for you, which are done in 4K, but also have some zoom-ins here. So first of all, let's look at FSR 2.0 compared to the native image here. And at the quality setting, it is so incredibly close that I can't really tell a major difference here at all. Now you're gonna hear my kids running around upstairs because I wasn't planning on filming a video right now. I usually do it when they're asleep in the morning. But anyway, we're gonna keep rolling, guys. Now, when we zoom in here, for those of you on a non-4K screen, especially 1080p, this is a 2x zoom. So 2 times on the side length dimension, so 4 times on the area. In other words, this is taking the 4K image, but letting somebody on a 1080p screen see this at its native image. And I've got to say, the FSR 2.0 here is incredibly close to the native image. I would be absolutely happy to use this, and this is fantastic. Now, if we go down to the balanced setting, I now think that it is also, again, incredibly close to the native image, but I can start to pick out a few differences. They're not major differences, but I would definitely take the quality setting over the balance setting, and I would only go down to the balance setting if I needed to, because I wasn't getting to the performance that I wanted to from my frame rate counter there. Now, what about if we go down to the performance mode? Well, now in the performance mode, I can definitely see that this is not native 4K. At balanced, you had to kind of squint a little bit. At performance mode, this looks good. And to be clear, while they took out the FSR 1.0 from this game, so I can't give you direct comparison, it is a night and day difference compared to the FSR 1.0 upscaling technique. This performance mode looks significantly better. And I would use it in a pinch, although I just rather not have to. Now, the Ultra Performance mode, to be honest, I don't think should really be used unless you absolutely have to. We're starting to see a lot of little blurriness in the details. This is not the one for me, but it's nice that it's there in case somebody's just really needs a boost to performance and they're not too worried about getting some image quality loss here. But what about compared to DLSS? How does this compare to DLSS? And this is a 2.3 version in this game. Well, I'd say that compared to DLSS, quality versus the quality setting here, things look very, very similar. They don't look identical, but I don't think it's necessarily one is better or worse than the other. I think a lot of what we might be seeing here is the difference in the sharpness settings. I've left both of the sharpness settings here at their defaults. In the game settings, it has the sharpness default to 0 for FSR 2.0, whereas it has it default to a higher setting on DLSS. And I chose to go with the defaults rather than try to adjust the sharpness to match, because I think most people will set them at their defaults, but just be aware there is a sharpness slider here that you could play around with. Now, going down to DLSS balanced, I think I'm starting to see DLSS take a little bit of a lead here in terms of the image quality, but it is small. Also notice that the performance difference between DLSS and FSR 2.0 are very similar, although I am running both of these on my RTX 3080 12GB rather than also doing doing the FSR testing on an AMD GPU. Could do some AMD testing in the future, but in order to compare DLSS with FSR 2.0, I have to be running a GPU that can run DLSS, obviously. And I love that AMD doesn't lock their stuff down the way that NVIDIA does here. Anyway, stepping down to the performance mode, again, I think we start to see DLSS show off that I think DLSS does a better job at reconstructing the images from the lower resolution settings compared to FSR 2.0. FSR 2.0 does a much better job at the low resolution upscales than FSR 1.0 did, and honestly it does a pretty good job, but DLSS I think is looking a little bit more put together here. And when we step down to the ultra performance modes, I think this again just further accentuates the bit of an advantage that we get here from DLSS. Although honestly, neither of them looks great at ultra performance. And NVIDIA even markets ultra performance as something that you would use if you're trying to upscale to 8K displays, because, you know, that really panned out this generation, didn't it, NVIDIA? Anyway, so overall, my final thoughts here are that FSR 2.0 is a fantastic move from AMD, and I'm really excited to see the game support list expanding. I'm also specifically excited to see God of War adding it, because not only is this a major title, and one that is pretty heavy, and AMD could use the performance boost here for sure, and this was a great standout title for DLSS, but also that this was not one of the games that was on AMD's announced list, which means that while AMD had only announced a few games with FSR 2.0 coming out in the future, man, my kids are noisy, guys. Sorry about this. Anyway, while AMD had only announced a few games with FSR 2.0 coming out in the near future, the fact that God of War wasn't on this list but was already the third game to get it brings me some hope that we'll actually see the game support come out a lot better than what we were seeing from, you know, what we might have expected from that initial list. Because FSR 2.0, my final thoughts are it is almost as good as DLSS, and it's as good as it needs to be to have DLSS not be a major reason to buy NVIDIA over AMD. However, currently DLSS has a huge head start in game implementation. So for AMD to really catch up, to have DLSS not be a major selling point, when you do your pros and cons list between the two brands, it needs to be in more games. And especially in new games that come out, but also getting into these older games that already have DLSS. Now AMD claims that a game that already has DLSS 2.0 or higher support should only take 3 days to implement FSR 2.0 of development time. I don't know how true that is, but if that's the case, it'll be really nice to see more games getting added here. And, you know, we got a game added last week, we got one this week. Let's keep that rolling, AMD. I'm really excited to see what comes of this in the future, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.